Morning guys. So I've slipped out of editing mode for a while just to share a couple things with you that I found out about the camera that I'm really enjoying. Bear in mind this is our honeymoon period, right? So I'm going to share things with you that are new and fresh and exciting about the camera. Later on we'll go back and have an assessment about things that perhaps aren't so good about Micro Four Thirds compared to full frame cameras. What I've done is I've just been through a couple of YouTube videos of other people who are actually walking the same road, and there's one guy in particular who's pretty funny. I actually enjoy his vlogs, and I've included the links at the bottom because they've done some work that I haven't done and that I perhaps don't have time to do. So I appreciate it that they've gone out and done it and that we can share it on this forum. I think it's important to get as much info from as many people as possible, and I'm not really looking for sponsorship or likes or whatever the case is. So I like to share as much information with you as I can, and I think they're really worthwhile. There is another guy who's pretty boring. He'll probably put you to sleep. However, his research is good, and they make some very valid points, both of them. So take a look, and hopefully you'll get some valuable advice out of them. So this morning I tested out the vibration reduction on the camera. So this is the Panasonic G9, Lumix G9. And I wanted to see how far I could push it before I started picking up shake or movement in my pictures. So let's go back a step to full frame. Okay, the cameras that I was using previously had no stabilization built in, the Canon full frame 35mm DSLR system. So if I was using a 50mm lens, you know, there's that old saying that your minimum shutter speed on a lens should be 1 over the focal length of whatever the zoom is or the lens that you're using. So for instance, if you're shooting with a 50mm lens, when you're hand holding, you should never shoot slower than a 50th of a second if you want to make sure that your picture's going to be sharp and not have any motion blur. Of course, it depends where you are. I mean, if you're on a ship in the middle of the ocean, then 50th of a second you're still going to get blur. So it's all kind of, you've got to bear everything in mind, but let's just be logical about this. If you're standing on a street corner and you're hand holding with your camera, they're recommending that with a 50mm lens, don't shoot slower than a 50th of a second. Okay, let's push it. Let's have a 200mm lens on your camera. Don't shoot slower than 200th of a second. Okay, if you've got a 28mm lens, don't shoot slower than 28th of a second. All right, so we see where this is going. Now, it gets a little bit complicated because with Micro Four Thirds, a 25mm lens is the equivalent of a 50mm lens in 35mm standards. Fortunately, it's quite easy to jump between the two because the Micro Four Thirds sensor is exactly half the size of a full frame sensor. So as I was saying, 25mm lens on a Micro Four Thirds times 2 is a 50mm lens on a full frame camera. So that's pretty easy. So back to the experiment. On my full frame system, I would have to hand hold at around 50th of a second with a 50mm lens. I took the Panasonic this morning and I used a zoom lens actually because it's got image stabilization built into the lens, and I put it onto 25mm, which is the equivalent of 50. And then I took a series of shots at different shutter speeds, and I'm going to post those now, and you'll see that I managed to hand hold. Bear in mind, I've got a fairly steady hand. I'm not the most steady, but I'm steadier than most. I hand held a 50mm lens for a shot for 2 seconds. I got a little bit lucky perhaps, but 1 second I could do fairly consistently. So instead of shooting at a 50th of a second, I can shoot down to 1 second. That is insane. Okay, that is, bear in mind, that's combining your 5-axis image stabilization in your body with the image stabilization that comes with the lens. It's giving you about 6 or 6.5 stops is what they recommend. I think I pushed it even a little bit further than that. That is insane. So the only thing you must watch for if you are shooting at, let's say, 1 second, is that your subject matter's not moving. I mean, it's a weird situation that you might be taking a picture of someone standing, you're standing with the camera, you shoot for 1 second and you manage to get a crisp still image because the camera's helping you, but the person standing posing is going to be the one that moves. So that's where your motion's going to come in, from the subject moving, not from your camera moving. Okay, obviously that's pushing it to the extreme, but hey, I often get into situations with, let's say with a 50mm lens, where I'd love to shoot at 15th of a second, 10th of a second. Now it's easy. That's an unbelievable advantage. The other nice little thing that I'm enjoying is the charging process. So this is the charger that comes with the camera, and you plug it in to a normal little micro USB plug, and that's what powers your charger, and you can just charge your batteries normally. However, if you don't want to use that, you can just plug your normal little USB cable straight into the camera. That charges the battery that's on board. Why that's a great advantage is if you're doing a time lapse, which this camera's got, it's got settings to do a time lapse. You just plug your power into your USB and your camera's going to stay powered forever. Fantastic. I remember once doing on my Nikon system, I needed to do like a 24 or 48 hour time lapse. I had to go and buy a power cable that was going to keep the camera powered the whole time. It cost like 4,000 Rand. It was ridiculous. Here it's just your charger. You plug it straight in. Voila. Fantastic. Right, I'm going to keep you posted. Don't forget to check out those other guys' videos. I think they're pretty insightful, and I'll keep you posted when I find out the next exciting thing about this little beast. Cool, guys.